My name is Daniel Linden. I'm going to be reading from my new novel, The Content of Character, available at Amazon.com and Barnes & Noble. This is an excerpt from Chapter 1. Joe Posey shot the basketball and it went through the hoop with a sharp snap of the cords. He looked at the older boy and asked him, "You really want to do this?" "Just shoot the ball," he said. Joe shrugged and shot 10 straight free throws without a miss. He grinned at the older boy and said, "You can still get out of this bet. I don't mind. I'll let you." And he laughed. The older boy snarled and pointed at the hoop, and Joe resigned himself. He shot the ball. Over and over, 50 times he shot, and each time the whipping snap of the cords was the only sound. Joe stopped and took off his windbreaker and laid it on the asphalt court. His blond hair was nearly white in the sun, and I could see his blue eyes laughing. I could also see he was getting bored. He was no longer concentrating, and he was shifting around at the line, his weight moving from foot to foot like a ship rolling in the waves. His eyes searched up and down the street and finally came back to the ball at his feet. He picked it up and shot 20 more times without a miss. He switched to shooting with only one hand. He shot a couple with the left, a couple with the right, and then switched again, shooting underhand with only one hand. First left and then right, and then he spread his legs and shot one Wilt Chamberlain style, both hands and the ball between his knees. "How many is that, Davy?" 91, I said. "Okay," he looked at the older boy and smiled. "I'll tell you what, here are a couple shots off the backboard." The ball popped against the backboard and fell sweetly through the rim. "And here's one I really love. I'll bounce it off the front of the rim and then off the backboard, and then see, it drops right in. Don't believe it? Here, I'll do it again." And he did. Next, he took 2 high hook shots with his left hand and then 2 with his right hand. He grinned over at the older boy again and then threw the ball hard at the asphalt at his feet. The ball bounced high into the air and came down through the net. 100, he said. The older boy stared at Joe. He was not smiling. He had a line between his eyebrows that had not been there earlier. His expression held disbelief, anger, and yes, there was even a little fear. "Jesus Christ," he said, "nobody can do that." "Want to go double or nothing?" said Joe, and he laughed again, and the older boy turned away. "No," he said. He walked to the side of the court and opened up his gym bag. He dug around and found some coins and then walked across the street to the mom-and-pop grocery on the corner. When he came back, he was carrying a small brown paper bag, and he gave it to Joe. Joe nodded his head and brought it over to me. He opened it and pulled out an ice cream sandwich and handed it to me. "Here, Davy, thanks for shagging balls for me." God, I love my big brother. Joe walked over and offered his hand to the older boy. He smiled at him, and the boy's sullen stare finally softened, and he took Joe's hand. "That was amazing," he said. "Thanks," said Joe, "but lots of guys can do it. There was a guy on the Bulls team once, hit over 700 straight. Why don't you come by sometime for a little 21, or we can see if we can get a game going?" "I don't think I could play with you. You're pretty good." "Nah," said Joe, "we're just playing for fun." "Man, it's got to be fun. You play on my team and I'll get you shots. You'll have a great time." He grinned broadly. "Well, okay then," he said. Then he took his gym bag and walked away. I stopped thinking. I see the image of a lone soldier on a dirt road between 2 rice paddies carrying an M16 in his hands. Small people wearing baggy clothes and conical hats work at either side of him as he moves down the path. When he comes even and goes past, I see he carries a basketball attached somehow to his field pack, and the incongruous nature of the gun, the rice peasants, and the ball seems to make my cry out. I have to keep my eyes shut and hold on to the velvet, the quiet. I stay still a moment and let out my breath. Then I go back to the asphalt court. My brother Joe was the best basketball player in the world. Here he was at age 15, sinking 100 straight free throws to win a 10-cent bet for an ice cream sandwich and then giving it to me. He was so good he actually held court. Everybody wanted to try him. He played one-on-one, 21, or just horse against all the high school varsity players and destroyed them. When he could, he would challenge college players at home for the summer. He beat them all. There were a lot of good players around, and they would sometimes get a 3-on-3 or even a full-court game going. And that was really something to see. Joe always played the point guard position and would set up plays spontaneously with young men he had never even met before. He always knew what everyone was going to do before they did it. He was that good. I was only 8 years old, And although I could hear people whispering behind closed doors saying that word, retarded, I didn't really know what it meant, and Joe never believed it anyway. He always treated me like I was his best friend. He took me with him when he walked down to the community center over on Galena Boulevard, or when he could get somebody interested in a pickup game at the YMCA. He always brought me along. The Negro boys made fun of me for the way I sometimes acted when I couldn't help it, but Joe told me not to mind them and to always watch him. He would laugh at them, shuck and jive with the best, talk trash, and when they thought they had Joey beat, he would fake a shot, get them to really go for it, and then take the ball to the basket and dunk it. He was a skinny, 15-year-old white kid who outshot, outjumped, outdribbled, and outpassed all of them, and to make matters worse, laughed at them when he won. The Negro boys hated him for it. Not all, of course. There were the boys who had played on his team at Jefferson Junior High School. They loved him. They said he was the best teammate they ever had. Joe loved to pass the ball, and he made them look really good. They came over to the house and shot baskets with him on the hoop my dad put up on the garage roof. Mom brought lemonade or Cokes afterwards, and I would listen to them talk with Joe. I loved the musical cadence of their voices and the odd slang. The boys from the other junior highs feared and admired Joe in equal measure, and most were looking forward to playing beside him at West Aurora Senior High. I thought back to that morning again and looked to see a giant blond man climbing out of his pickup truck. I waved at him and immediately went back to licking the edges of my ice cream sandwich. It was melting perfectly. "Hi, Uncle Bjorn," called Joe. "Hey, Hotshot." "Hi, Davy. What are you eating?" Joey won an ice cream sandwich. He shot 100 straight free throws. My uncle turned to Joe. "You shot 100 straight free throws for a goddamn ice cream sandwich?" he growled. "Jesus Christ, I need to teach you how to gamble." If you enjoyed that, come back and see us again. We'll be adding more chapters and more scenes from the content of character. Again, available at Amazon.com or Barnes & Noble. Thanks for coming.